want to get out to Mike Seidel, reporting on what's going on in southern parts of Texas. And Mike, you are getting hammered right now.
We are. You can see it on the radar. We saw it coming. This is, I would say, kind of the northwest side of, we don't have a true eye wall or eye, but the northwest side of the core of what's left of Tropical Storm Beta, and where the rain is really coming out is, I'm looking at the trees in the distance, and they're getting around them pretty good. I have to say the wind gusts here are somewhere between 40 and 50 miles an hour. We'll check the local gauge, but just unrelenting, stinging rain, and you can see what the wind has done to Matagorda Bay behind me. Boy, it is just turned up. And again, we're not right on the Gulf of Mexico. We've got protections in the barrier island. We're going to stay with you from the bay, and more coverage on Beta from the Weather Channel coming up next. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Port O'Connor, Texas, as Beta finally gets closer to the coast. And what we're seeing here on Matagorda Bay is one of these squalls. Carl Parker's on the radar back at the Weather Channel. Carl, we're on the northwest side of the circulation. We don't have a true eye wall, but this is as close as we're going to get with a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm. And you can see what the wind has done, turning the bay into a giant bathtub. We've had these winds since yesterday, but not this strong. These are running at about 35 miles an hour sustained. We've had gusts up over 40. Remember, this is a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm, so we're not going to get hurricane-force wind gusts. That seems very unlikely. But it's enough to blow certainly the rain around. I've seen some palm fronds come down right now, and certainly the wind with these squalls blows harder and steadier. Carl, you can show us the radar, what's coming around the backside of Beta. Does look like it's going to go in north of us here later on today. But so we're going to be on the western side, and we're going to get that wind more offshore. That's going to help the surge situation in this part of Texas.
Yeah, Mike, you've got a pretty good band of showers coming through right now, and whenever you have weather like that. So let's get back out to Mike right now. And Mike, this is basically going to be your peak period here for weather effects over the next several hours. And, you know, we can all just thank our lucky stars that this thing took in so much dry air, because if you had a humid air mass all around this storm, I think you'd be looking at a really different situation at your location right now.
Yeah, remember, Carl, how hard it tried several times, especially yesterday, to get it back together. The convection blew up, only to be, the energy get sucked out of it by the dry air. We talked yesterday on the air how comfortable it was standing out on the coast here, because, all these storms, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, we were covering the storm, and, the day or two before, the heat index is, 100, 105 even. Before Cristobal on Surfside Beach just down the coast, where they're getting battered. That's where you're going to get the really serious beach erosion. We had a heat index of 112 in Corpus. But yesterday, the dew points were 59 to 62. So it was a whole different air mass, more like fall for this part of the world. And that's what happened. Beta was trying to strengthen, and the dry air got sucked in. And boy, I tell you what, dry air and wind shear are not the friends of tropical systems, but there are friends on the Gulf Coast. And we could use more dry air and shear if we have any more systems approaching, because we've had more than a few that have strengthened rapidly at the last minute. And that's because they didn't have the shear. They had all the warm water, which we have here, and they didn't have the dry air fall.
Yeah, Mike, you can see that just as plain as day when we look at the water vapor imagery. I mean, it's just bone dry off to the west there towards the Rio Grande Valley. Moistening up right now in southeast Texas. That's why we've gotten some heavier rain there, but still pretty dry as you get not too far inland. And so, I think we're going to continue to see this kind of thing over the next several hours. And let's take a look at some forecasts here and show you some radars as well. I want to show you right now the center of circulation. And again, Mike is located right here. I'm going to get this little arrow working right there. So that's where Mike is right there. So he is not very far away from that tropical storm. The core of the storm is about ready to come in. But again, you notice the absence of what's around him there. There's just not a lot of weather around him there, but where we are getting some bands Mike, that's where you're going to get the most wind when you see these little rounds of storms coming through, and there's one coming through Port O'Connor right now.
Yeah, and it's moving down the coast, so we'll see if we get enough rain in a short period of time to cause the Weather Service out of Corpus or Houston issue a flash flood warning. But we'll see how that goes. But again, this is going to be the worst of it here. Look at the wave action, Matagorda Bay out here in Port O'Connor, Texas, and also a big wave concern on the East Coast between cold high pressure, record lows this morning in the 20s and 30s, and petty going offshore. So not only waves battering the coast here, but for those of you from, say, the Jersey Shore, especially coastal New England, it is going to get really rough later tonight into Tuesday as that swell arrives and then the waves really crank there. We'll keep you updated on the situation on the East Coast, more on Beta, the rainfall impact, and more on the surge too. Stay with us. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Port O'Connor, Texas. I am meteorologist Mike Seidel. We are getting the worst of Beta. It's a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm, and just look at Matagorda Bay. Wow, it's like a giant bathtub. Winds now gusting over 40 miles an hour in this squall. You can see that on the radar. Rolling down the beach. It's like the center may go in around Matagorda Beach, which is not far away. It's about an hour and a half drive, but you got to go out, in and out, and back to the coast. So it goes in for a north, and we get the wind around the backside. That's going to help with the surge. By the way, the peak surge earlier today was 3.2 feet. And we did get water in some of the streets, not the kind of pictures we're seeing from the Strand area in Galveston, and we've seen in Jamaica Beach and the Freeport area and beautiful Surfside, but we have had some streets underwater. And Carl, this is about as hard as it has rained with this squall. It's pelting it, but again, the saving grace, the storm did not intensify. Thank goodness. We could have been dealing with a hurricane. And these winds right now sustain probably, I wouldn't be surprised if these are 35 to 40. Remember, tropical storm force is 39 miles an hour or higher, up to 73, and then you get to the hurricane category. And it is just ripping right down Matagorda Bay. Remember, the coast here is not more south coast. It's more like this, and we're right here. So the winds are coming almost parallel, but they're going to go more north and west. And that's going to help to push the water offshore. We got another high tide later this evening. Low tide occurring at 2:15, so we just had a low tide. Not that we could tell right here on the seawall, but a real battering right now for Beta as we get the fresh water from the atmosphere and the salt water blowing off Matagorda Bay. So, Carl, this is the thick of it. And if you compare it to Lake Charles, and that, major hurricane, gosh, thank goodness it's just a mid-range tropical storm. Everybody here is very, very happy. We saw some folks at lunch, and they were very happy that we came in and just got what we got. They're used to this. In fact, they were saying, a lot of folks were saying they get what they call northers that are worse than this. So they're very happy that they didn't have to deal with a hurricane and just a little street flooding. So go ahead and pull the boats in. Obviously, no fishing today in this big fishing area. But by and large, you're going to get through this in pretty good shape because if winds don't gust much over 50 miles an hour, you really don't get much in the way. Very minimal structural damage.
Could have been so much worse if we'd have been looking at a really humid environment. Mike, thank you. And we can show you what everything looks like from a...
Good afternoon. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Tropical Storm Beta. Now just off the coast, it's going to make landfall north of here, but we're getting the core, or what is the core. Again, this is not your classic tropical storm. We had so much dry air and wind shear, which is the saving grace. Both factors held this back from becoming a hurricane and doing any more damage than it's done, which has been basically a storm surge story in towns including Freeport, Surfside Beach, Galveston. We've seen the pictures of streets underwater, and we've got some streets underwater here, at least earlier today when we had high tide through the morning and we had a storm surge topping out at 3.2 feet. But right now, the latest breaking from the National Hurricane Center, Carl Parker, the 5 p.m. Eastern advisory on Beta, and I did notice it's actually slowed down again.
Now moving northwest at 5 miles per hour.
All right, let's get to the conditions that are along the central Texas coast with meteorologist Mike Seidel. He is in Port O'Connor for us. Mike, what's it like right now?
It's still very windy. These sustained winds about 30, 35 miles an hour. We've had some gusts up over 40. We've got a steady rain. It's not pelting us like it was. And we still have that surge issue. Now, it's up about 2.3 feet at last check. This morning at 3.2 was our highest value. And you can see this should normally be dry ground. This is asphalt leading to the boat dock here at Froggy's Bait Dock. And the whole area is surrounded by water. So it has come down a little bit. The tide is gradually coming in, but the next high tide is not till early tomorrow morning. They have kind of a different kind of a tide cycle in this part of the planet, this part of the Gulf of Mexico. I want to take you back, though, to about 4:15 to 4:30, and this is when we got whacked by a very strong squall. And when you consider a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm, this is about as strong as it's going to get. Wind gusts 45 miles an hour. Look at the wind and the rain blowing horizontally. This is right off Matagorda Bay. And speaking of the bay, look at the waves churned up like a giant bathtub. And keep in mind that the bay is protected by the barrier island, so we're not getting the full effect of those waves coming all the way in from the Gulf of Mexico. But I can tell you, from Port Aransas up to Matagorda Beach and those areas up to Galveston, we're getting a lot of beach erosion. In fact, let's go to the radar right now, and you can see what, we don't have an eye or a classic eye wall, but you can see that very heavy band right on Matagorda Beach. And that beach does not have a dune line. From what I remember, it's a parking lot. There's some buildings, but I can guarantee you that's all underwater, and you're getting the wave action. And now you've got very heavy rainfall. Notice some lightning bolts there, and that's rotating around the northern side. So we're very close to the center coming on shore. But as of 8 Eastern, it was still about 20 miles southeast of here and 25 miles south-southwest of Matagorda, which is inland from the beach. So very close, but moving very slowly, Mike Bettis. So just annoyingly slow, and that's going to keep the rainfall issues up. We still have the flash flood watch for most of this area, all the way up to Houston and Galveston, through Tuesday evening at least. And the surge is going to take a while to wind down because the winds are still blowing parallel to the coast here. But a gradual shift to the northwest. But again, if it just gets inland and goes back out, we're still going to have the push of water. Granted, the winds won't be as strong as to get into Tuesday and Wednesday. But these slow-moving tropical systems, man, they're for the birds.
Yeah. Listen, your point is well taken here, Mike. This thing's going to be so slow. The surge is not extreme by any sense of the imagination here, but just everlasting, unfortunately. Mike, thank you so much. Really appreciate the update tonight from